All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Evening for Educators. We are delighted to have you here this evening. My name is Glenna Barlow, and I'm the Curator of Education here at the Columbia Museum of Art. I wanted to begin first by thanking our sponsors. Bank of America is our sponsor for the evening. As an organization, they are committed to education, and we are so grateful for their support. We really couldn't have programs like this without the support of partners and sponsors like them, so we appreciate their generous support. And thank you so much for being with us this evening. We know that things are really difficult tonight and throughout these last few months. We're very used to welcoming you into the museum and providing a space to unwind and get to know each other, experience the art in person, which is what we are all about. So I hope that instead of that, you are enjoying a glass or maybe two of wine and you're in your comfiest clothes. For anyone who might be wondering, just as a housekeeping note, although we normally offer your credit renewal sheets in person, we will be sharing a credit renewal form with everyone who's attending this evening. So I'll be sending that out over email tomorrow. So I know these are trying times. I don't have to tell any of you that. And I know that I speak for everyone at the CMA's Education and Engagement team when I say that we are just in awe of the work that you are doing. You're on the front lines of everything, and we're so impressed with the way you continually work to make our students feel safe and nurtured, all while rising to the very unique challenges that teaching, whether virtual, hybrid, or in-person, demand. And we are just so appreciative and thankful for the work that you're doing every day. So while we can't have you at the museum right now, we do want to be able to share some resources that we have for you. And we've been working hard to try to provide a number of different offerings that we hope will best suit the needs of you and your students. So these really run the gamut from everything from free image sets and lesson plans to other offerings like virtual tours. So we offer up those image sets and lesson plans. You'll see that in our lesson plans and resources. And you can find all of these things at that link below there. So if you download those, you'll find image sets that have been curated and selected for particular subjects. And those come with lesson plans that are in Word documents. So you can adapt them and edit them as you see fit. And then we have a number of different virtual field trip options as well. You'll also see the continuing education, and that's where we have our workshops listed as well as past resources. So like the popular webinars and panel discussions that we offered over the summer, those are all available for you right there. And finally, we have our virtual field trip option. So we've tried to offer up as much variety as possible in terms of virtual field trips and how we can best meet your students' needs. So first, we have options for asynchronous art-based conversations, and those are through VoiceThread. If you've used that platform before, you know it can communicate with a lot of different LMS systems. We also have options for live facilitated conversations, and those are led by me or one of our docent educators. And finally, we have pre-recorded video tours that we've created and taken throughout the galleries. So I'll share a quick clip here of one of our middle school tours just to give you a small taste of what that will look like.
Okay, so when we look around this gallery, what do you think these objects all have in common? In other words, why do you think the curators decided to put all of these pieces together? What sort of theme do you think they were going for? So the theme of this gallery is place. And how do you think this camel here fits into that theme? Well, when you think of a camel, what do you think of? What do you typically associate camels with?
So you can see we've offered you the opportunity to pause and have a conversation with your students. We're trying to maintain that sort of interactivity that we would have on a real in-person tour, although you would be the one facilitating that conversation in this case. And then we can
pause and discuss. So when we think about a camel, we often think of places like the desert or places with extreme temperatures and extreme conditions like sand and wind and hot and cold, right? But this camel in particular, if you notice, what details do you notice about this camel that gives us even more information? Pause here, discuss. So you'll notice this camel seems like it's loaded up for a journey. Look at those big bags on the saddle that are hanging down on either side. So why do you suppose this camel is loaded up that way? Well, probably he's getting ready for a long journey. So
that's just a quick taste of what our virtual tour offerings look like in terms of the video gallery tours that we offer. That's just a little snippet to give you a taste. And you can actually access our full 35-minute Black is Beautiful tour. And that is on our website. That's offered totally free to you. And you can follow that again by clicking on those links or jotting down those links to access later. So even though we know a visit to the museum might be out of the question for the foreseeable future, we do hope that there's an option here that will help you to engage your students with art throughout the curriculum and really bring the museum to them in some kind of way. Another virtual opportunity for your students comes in the form of our online student gallery. And we launched this summer with our Black is Beautiful exhibition. And we were really overwhelmed by the response. Some of them you can see here on your screen. We really hope this will provide an authentic way for your students to present their work to a broader platform. So right now we're accepting pieces that relate to our upcoming exhibition, Visions from India. And you'll be hearing more about that shortly. And any of the themes that we highlight in our collection galleries. So we're currently seeking works that fit any of those descriptions. And these are available for grades K through 12 and college. So this is really for students at any level. And that brings us back to the museum. We are open. You can read more about our safety procedures and our gallery capacities and all of those things online. But yes, the CMA is open Wednesday through Sunday for visitors. We're also working on even deeper discounts for educator memberships. There's already a discount for educators, but we're working on even better deals for our teacher members. So be on the lookout for those. Those should be coming to you soon. And we do still offer our student memberships at just $10, which pays for itself in 2 visits. It's a great deal. So do encourage your students to take advantage of that. Okay, we are almost to the main event, but before we move on, there's one more order of business that I have to mention. So at the end of each school year, we typically honor the recipient of the MacArthur Goodwin Award. So as many of you know, the late MacArthur was a national champion for the importance of arts education, and he really served as a mentor to countless educators throughout the state and beyond. So his legacy lives on in part in the form of this award, which recognizes excellence in education and celebrates teachers who make the arts and cultural resources like museums a central part of their teaching practice. And so it's my distinct pleasure to announce the winner of the 2019 to 2020 MacArthur Goodwin Award. And that educator is Sarah McGregor. Many of you probably know Sarah. Some of you may even be joining tonight because she invited you. Or maybe you met her when she chatted you up about your content area next to the snack table at a past evening for educators. But Sarah really exemplifies so much of what this award is all about. She is committed to providing authentic experiences for her students and using her community as a resource, whether that's organizing photography trips to the state fair, partnering with local history museums to create on-site exhibitions of her students' work, or facilitating trips to the CMA that are tailored to her students' particular needs and interests. Sarah is continually seeking out new opportunities to further her own practice as well as her students. She frequently attends CMA educator workshops. She finds lectures and gallery openings at the CMA and all over town. You'll often find her chatting with local artists, usually inviting them to speak to her students. And she is the first to share these opportunities with anyone she thinks would enjoy or benefit from them, including her students and peers, of course. And in her spare time, I know what teacher has spare time, but somehow Sarah manages to serve as a docent here at the museum, attending training sessions and leading tours whenever she can. I don't think I can say it any better than the words of one of her former students who said, "Sarah McGregor has been instrumental in my growth as an artist and an individual. She taught me to look everywhere for inspiration. She taught me about things I never knew about and found a deep love for them. I'm very grateful that I had the privilege to be her student." Sarah exemplifies the great work that we know passionate, engaged teachers are doing every day, and we're delighted to be able to recognize her efforts tonight. And we wish we could be with her in person and with all of you to celebrate her properly and present her with her award. But in lieu of that, please join me in giving Sarah a virtual round of applause as I invite her to just say a few words. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Yay, thank you so much. I'm so honored to receive this award that represents MacArthur Goodwin's dedication to arts and education. I would much rather be celebrating with some free wine at the CMA, but I will certainly be lifting a glass at home. From my students' pop art in the gallery to PBS NewsHour, thank you to the Columbia Museum of Art for providing amazing opportunities. Everyone at the CMA has been a tremendous asset for creating engaging educational experiences. But this award isn't just about me. It's for every educator who inspired me to embrace the arts and to become a teacher. It is their passion and dedication and yours that I strive to share with my students every single day. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Cheers to you. Hope everyone's raising a glass at home. Oh, thank you so much. Well, we'll give you a virtual round of applause, and we will have to honor you properly when we're all able to meet again. I want to give you this lovely plaque next time we're together in person. I know so many of you out there are doing great work, and I hope that you'll think of nominating your colleagues for this award next spring, because we love to honor and celebrate our teachers. All right, and now it's time to turn our attention to our upcoming exhibition and the topic for tonight's talk, which is Visions from India. So normally we would invite you to come get a sneak peek of the exhibition in our galleries, but of course, since we can't be here together to do that, we thought we'd offer up a short video preview for you instead, just to kind of pique your interest and hopefully whet your appetite. This should give you just a glimpse at the broad range of works that are on view in this exhibition and the wide range of materials, techniques, scale. All of these things are so diverse, and I hope you'll get a little taste of that with this video. Well, I hope that gave you a little sneak preview and a little taste of what's to come. But in light of this exhibition, Visions from India, we are delighted to have our beloved curator, Catherine Walworth, here with us. Catherine is truly a driving force behind the exhibitions and the collections that you see on view at the museum. And it is in large part thanks to her passions and dedicated efforts that we're able to offer exhibitions like this that represent a more global view of art and artistic production. I know she is absolutely thrilled, as I am, to be able to share these works of art, and not just Indian art, but contemporary Indian art. These really range from meticulously detailed multimedia drawings to massive, breathtaking installations. The tours we'll be offering in conjunction with this exhibition, which are both very limited in person and virtual, will highlight themes like industrialization, urbanization, and identity, but they also link to India's rich history. So there are some really great connections to be made between the state social studies standards, in addition to art and design, of course. So I'm sure you're gonna love getting to know the artists in this exhibition as much as we have enjoyed pulling it together. If you do have questions about the exhibition or the museum in general as we go through, please do drop those in the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. But now to give you some insights into the exhibition, I'm going to turn things over to our own curator, Catherine Walworth.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, good. That was sort of an ungraceful screen sharing. Welcome. I'm so excited. I'm really beyond excited. This exhibition is so very special, and I do hope, I can't tell you just how rare it is to see this kind of material. This is sort of almost a once in a lifetime opportunity. So we're just so excited to share it with you, and I'm glad it's opening during this fall school year. So so just to explain sort of really briefly, the reason we have this opportunity is that it was collected by a man named Ron Pizzuti. So this comes from a private collection, and it's been 3 years ago, I wrote to the Pizzuti collection and asked if we could borrow these works. So it's not a traveling exhibition. Ron Pizzuti actually purchased this building in Columbus, Ohio to showcase his own contemporary collection to the community, and because he has such a vast collection, not just Indian art, but contemporary art in general. And so that is the source of this exhibition. So these artists, it's really interesting. I think you got a taste from that video. You almost thought, how could all these works go together in one exhibition? It probably wasn't what you were expecting. These artists basically all went to art school in the 90s, all around the world, but mostly in India. Some of them migrated from different cities in India to centers for art school. Some of them went to the UK, some went to America, but with the exception of 2 or 3 artists, they are all living in India and producing there. And India has become this global center of art. So these artists are having monographic solo exhibitions in Berlin, Paris, Singapore, you know, all over. And the New Delhi Art Fair started in 2008, and that's where Ron Pizzuti was collecting most of this work. So Rena Banerjees is an example of someone, she's just such a gloriously generous spirit. Her work, she began as a chemical engineer. She studied science, and then she just realized she really was meant to be an artist. And also kind of, you know, that side of her identity, she gave herself permission to do that, and realized that her mother, who had she moved from India to the UK when she was 4, and then to the United States when she was 7, and she grew up with her mother, who she realized was very much a maker. So this maker side of her just felt very natural. So there is this wonderful drawing of hers in the exhibition, which we did a slow looking exercise with our community advisory group, and they just saw so many wonderful things, so many relevant goddess figures. You know, they had things to say about the colors, and, you know, what is she doing with that earth balanced on her fingernail. There's so much to talk about and unpack in these images. And Rena loves she's just a collector of things. So even her titles are very long. She loves to collect. She likes to draw everything out and make everything messy. That is her sort of style and way of being. So even her titles, she was able to slip in and out of air as the soil and climate where she nourished turned to dust, is rather a short title for her. And this is, so for example, just to show you a bit of how really, you know, these artists are becoming very, very famous. This is a glimpse at her still ongoing retrospective, which is traveling around the world, or around the country. It opened its run in Philadelphia. So it will actually be in North Carolina starting in 2021. So that's just a glimpse, and you can see her sculptures, for example. And then ironically, or you know, as it happens, for example, in Nashville, her retrospective just opened there, and Jitish Kalat's show, also a monographic exhibition, just closed there. So these artists that we're seeing, this is actually a great opportunity to see a lot of artists that actually, once you are introduced to them, you then need to, you know, continue to look into what they're doing. Jitish Kalat is one of the most sort of, his work, again, like Rena's, a lot of these artists have very different modes of working. So this looks like it might be a small tabletop sculpture. It's very large. It's about 5 feet high. And it's hard to see, but these are all cast automobiles and trucks. And that is an overpass that's just basically been, you know, just the hubbub has ground the overpass into a complete circle, and it's just become chaos. This is cast resin. And just to give you an example, he lives and works in Mumbai. So he's drawing on his everyday experience. A lot of these artists live in Mumbai, and what they say is just there's so much going on outside your door that it both gives you lots of artistic material and also kind of grounds you down at the same time. So many of these artists are dealing with the issue of very rapid urbanization of what was once farmland, or the destruction of old buildings to make way for new ones. That's kind of a recurring theme in this exhibition. And just to show you a little bit of what else he does, this is from the same time as Petromorphine, the work in our show, but this is a rickshaw that looks like it's made out of bones. And he's responding to events. He had done a number of drawings after the Gujarat riots in 2002. A lot of the works in the exhibition are tied to actual political events, ongoing history in India. There are lots of points of intersection with social studies and history. This is another bone vehicle of his, not in the exhibition, but you can also get a sense of the scale that these artists are working on. They're really ambitious installation, just the way they're carrying out their really great imaginative ideas. Jagannath Panda is, there's one work of his in the same gallery. I'm glad that you did sort of a flyover detail look at this piece in the video, because it's hard to see, but there's copper, like iridescent fabric, there's copper thread. All of these birds are just sort of perched on Gandhi's sculpture. And he was really thinking about, and again, this is great for thinking about things like monuments today. What I learned is that actually India went through a whole movement in the 60s as well, where they had to deal with their colonial monuments and what to do with them, and they removed a lot of them to parks. But what Panda was doing specifically was really thinking about what is the meaning of Gandhi today for people his age. Where are they getting that idea from? And he realized, there are just images of Gandhi everywhere, including these sculptures, which are actually part of a colonial legacy. So he just sort of pictured him here almost like the birds are paying more attention to the sculpture than any. You don't even see a human, you just see lights on in the city windows behind. So just kind of a meditation on, our heroes and what happens to their legacy. Sudarshan Shetty, and I'm showing you pictures of these artists because they are really dynamic individuals and they deserve to sort of, you can see them. They're also, they're at a wonderful age where they're still young and fresh, but they are at their midpoint in their careers. Like I said, most of them were studying in the 90s, and in the aughts is when they really kind of became celebrities, and their work is just sought after all over the world. Sudarshan Shetty is the reason that Ram Pazudi fell in love with this area of collecting in particular. So it was his wonderful archway that you saw in the video. I'm glad that you could see that sword actually swings. He works with recycled teak that's taken from old buildings in Mumbai that have been demolished, and then he has craftsmen carve it in this beautiful, ornate way. And his works are really, I call them visual poems, and he actually begins with snippets of literature and poetry, and he thinks in a storytelling way, but it's almost like you have to complete the story. He's not telling you explicitly what it is. His works are very much about the duality of life, where you have all these wonderful expectations and all these hopes rising up, and then something happens to kind of balance it out and kind of bring you back to earth. Here's just a detailed shot of the beautiful carving. There's also this wonderful piece, same artist. You might think that this is a rug, but it's carved wood again. And it's just this just strange and wonderful, is that implying a body underneath? Is it a mountain range? What's happening there? It's just such a wonderful piece. We actually have to stanchion this off because I imagine people would want to touch it just to figure out what is going on with this material. But again, just really extraordinary. But then there's also this great beadwork, how fun are these? I mean, if anyone is my same age, you know, I grew up on Frogger, and there it is on the right. This is a diptych, 2 framed pieces. The piece on the left comes from the 1950 Jean Cocteau film Orpheus. Just to show you, there's an example of what you're actually looking at. And this beadwork by Avinash Veeraragavan is about this journey, an internal journey to discover yourself, and almost, you know, both in Orpheus, you know, going to the underworld and making it back out, and Cocteau's using the mirror, passing through the mirror to another place. Delightfully, Frogger is kind of doing the same thing. You're trying to get from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen and cross that river. So Avinash is doing this wonderful traditional beadwork in just this unexpected way. And a lot of it is because in the 90s, India's economy opened up and all these Western influences kind of flooded in. And so, you know, there's just more to work with. So the works in this exhibition are very much mashups. They're just picking and choosing and drawing, and lots of conceptual art examples as well. Subodh Gupta is probably the kind of the godfather of this exhibition. He's a little bit older. He's just an international celebrity. And here he is surrounded by what he's best known for, which are these metal works. This is the piece not shown here. This is as it was installed at the Pizzuti collection, but you saw in the video its installation here. These are tiffins. They're Indian lunchboxes on a sushi conveyor belt. There's a close-up. Just this beautiful, futuristic looking city. And as these move along the tracks, it just creates this, I mean, it's like a ballet. And it's also about, he very much loves foodways and cooking and the idea of food moving through the city. And in India, they're literally, you know, these lunch boxes are packed every day. Thousands of them are just transferred around the city. And yeah, it just turns into a visual ballet. There's an example of tiffins being loaded up for delivery. And just to show you, this is what I mean by, if you could go down a beautiful rabbit hole on each of these artists. This is an installation in Lille, France, where, I mean, look at the tiffins pouring out. This is a permanent installation, and it's, you know, speaking to the 2004 tsunami that occurred in India. But just, I mean, look at how he's using that same material in such a wonderful, really powerful way. Same thing here with this piece called Line of Control, which refers to a political area of contention. Just beautiful. So that's sort of his signature piece. So to get to see them actually in movement in our exhibition is really exciting. This is, I apologize for the reflections. This is a triptych by Bharti Kher, and she is absolutely wonderful. Here's Bharti. She works with, you know, she reverse diaspora. There's a lot of interesting avenues into this exhibition. These are all individuals with an individual lens, and they're all connected to India, and they're all grappling with facets of India in some way, but they're all individuals. And she grew up with Indian parents in the UK, but she did the reverse. She moved to India, not speaking the language. She was speaking English only at the time. And she started art school, and she was a painter at first. And she and Subodh Gupta were both painters at the time. And so she began just kind of scouring the marketplace and taking in the visual information that was surrounding her, soaking it up like a sponge. And one of the things that she discovered that she loved are these bindis that the vendors were selling, and she would see women wearing them. And you can get them not just in a circle, but in all these sort of modern shapes. So here's an example of a detail of that triptych that you just saw. They're all not made with paint, they're made with these applied bindis. And she loves that, you know, she talks about at night, you know, women would take it off and sometimes stick it on their mirror, their bathroom mirror. And she thinks of that as like millions of women doing that. It becomes this mass action. And her works are also very ambitiously large. Let's go back to that. You can see how large they are, in part because everything that she does is about the body. It's not just the bindi being applied to the body, but the pieces themselves being the scale of the body. And, you know, she mentioned once, and I love this, that the bindis are the third eye. So they're actually watching you as you're watching the piece. Kanishka Raja, unfortunately, passed away a couple of years ago during the planning of this exhibition. He died very young. He was one of the few that came to America and went to college at a couple in different states, Massachusetts, and then went to grad school in Texas, and then ended up in New York. And when he arrived in Texas, his former teacher said he was a painter's painter. He was really interested in this stuff of paint, the color, the texture. He was an abstract artist at the time. And his parents have a Kolkata-based textile business. So he was shifting between abstraction and textile pattern. And then what he eventually did, you know, as he wanted to make more references to real life, those realistic images were coming into his work, but he married it with his love of ornament and abstraction. So this is an example of double duty. You can just see how intricate this is and how much there is to look at, and sort of the mirror image that's off, you know, off center. And these rectangles are actually cots. So you wonder, you know, what's going on in this airport? You know, has there been, you know, who might need to stay on these cots? Where are those people? You know, what is happening? And there are a few artists in this exhibition that deal with these idea of spaces where they're in between spaces. And I think for someone who lives between cultures, as Kanishka did, it's very much sort of that airport is kind of a place, non-place. It's an in-between space. So I think that's why he loved these. And then this window screen, this Jali from the Babri Mosque, if you'll notice that pattern, and then look back at the painting, you can see he's making a very specific reference there. And that is, again, another political moment. This Babri Mosque was destroyed in 1992 by Hindu nationalists who, that mosque was built on the site of what they saw as the birthplace of the god Ram. And so it's a contested site. And there are sites like this throughout the world. And this is actually still being contested and comes up in the news even today. So it's interesting that he, again, but you have to know that. So once you know that about the patterning, the painting changes yet again. Here's another example of a sort of in-between. We still haven't figured out exactly what kind of space this is. It feels like an airport with the screens to the side, but yet it almost feels like a convention hall or something. It's just, it's very unclear. And then the space in his paintings is wonderful. You'll notice how it's almost like a waterfall, how it recedes on the sides. And then as it comes towards you, it just rushes downward. And it has the same Babri Mosque patterning on the floor. Dia Mehta Bhupal is a wonderful artist. She is, again, so ambitious. I show you this picture of her because you can see she uses magazines as her material. She thinks, you know, that images are constructing us as we're mediated by what we see in magazines, and you know, that's what she's using in particular, but social media too. So those images can construct us, but she takes the magazines, rolls them up, and then sorts them by color, and you can see those laying in front of her. And that is her material for making actual rooms. This is a piece called Waiting Room that's in our exhibition. It's a big diasec print, so it's a photograph, but as with Kanishka Raja, it's this in-between space, and she's very interested in what we're thinking about when we're in these kinds of waiting rooms or different rooms. But you can see how the image is sort of striated. It looks like there are lines, almost pencil lines. That is actually the rolled up magazine paper. So this is a sculpture that you're looking at that's been photographed. Just to show you another example that almost feels more room-like. This is another waiting room that she did, all from paper. And just to give you a sense of scale and the fact that this really is a room, there she is standing in this room. So it takes her a year and a half to construct these. She takes the photo and then just, does away with the sculpture that she made. But there are various artists that we have worked with recently that have the same kind of idea, where artists who were originally trained as photographers in the pre-digital world, where you're actually developing photos in the darkroom, many of them are looking for ways to get back to the hand of photography. And I think for her, this is one way. You're actually touching paper again, but she's doing it to construct these spaces. But really, it's not so much about the space, it's about how we behave in that space, what we think about in that space. So again, I love her ambition. And I think that's the last image that I have for you. I really just did a quick dance through this exhibition. There's so many different materials. When you walk in, each gallery is a completely different experience. There's every kind of medium that you could wish for, and so much to talk about. It's again, I can't stress what a huge opportunity. We have this wonderful speaker, our keynote speaker. Even he mentioned to us, you just don't see this work very often. So we're really excited about it, and happy to answer questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was a wonderful overview to some of the pieces that you'll see in this exhibition, and I hope this has piqued your curiosity a little bit. So we'd love to open it up for questions. We wanted to allow plenty of time for you to ask us what you wanted to, or if there are images you'd like us to return to that you want to dive into and see a little bit more closely, we're happy to do that too. So do go ahead and drop your questions into the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring those. But I might just kick it off, Catherine, with a question for you. And in doing a lot of thinking and researching about these pieces, one thing that's really struck me is the materiality of them and all of the vastly diverse materials that you see. And you spoke about several of them, but I love this use of found objects and kind of repurposing, different materials, or, mixing prefabricated and original or handmade elements. Can you speak to that a little bit? I'm thinking about Rena's work, but it certainly appears in lots of others too.
Yes, I think that, thank you for that question. I think I could answer that in two different avenues. One would be the fact that I think when everything kind of opened up in the 90s, like MTV arrived, and Atari and music and all these Western influences, but that also includes Western art. They learned about Western art, and I think you could probably pinpoint other cultures that use found objects just as much. But Marcel Duchamp very famously kind of made found objects, a thing. So I think there's part of that, but I also think that when you're going to make conceptual art that has references, the lunchboxes, for example, that's so Indian, it's so specific, but yet it becomes this visual experience that even if you don't know what they are, it's magnificent. And it's nice when we had members of our community advisory group come in, they just lit up. And I realized this would be the equivalent of if my strawberry shortcake lunchbox were on this, if all these vintage lunchboxes were just rolling by, that's what I think they were experiencing. So it has all these different levels, but that's one way where you can take an object that refers to something in your culture, do something different with it. There's a real alchemy in this exhibition for sure. Bartu Kher likes the number 3, like for example, her triptych, because she likes that idea that you take one thing, you take another thing, when you put them together, they're a third thing that's completely new. So there's a lot of that in this exhibition.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, there are so many elements of this show that seem quintessentially, Indian in terms of some of the aspects of them, like the tiffins or the bindis or something that just really screams India. But then they're used in such original ways that it really kind of turns them on their head and makes you think about them in a totally new way. So I love that about the show. And we got a request to look at the large sculpture made from the teak. I don't know if that's the archway or the rug, but maybe we can take a look at both of them again.
hold on, I did it back. I'm having I don't know why it doesn't want to. All right, let's try it.
Erase the arrows.
There we go. All right, yeah. Oh, the archway?
I think so. Yeah, we can look at both. Yeah, both. It looks like she's interested in both. So yeah, when I see these objects, I'm struck by, the scale, of course, really, really strikes me. But I also see a connection to more historical structures as well. I mean, there aren't a lot of really overt historical references in this show and in contemporary Indian art in general, if we can kind of paint with a broad brush there. But, and I think a lot of that is because they're sort of chiefing against this notion of, what Indian art is expected to be and what people are thinking of when they think of traditional Indian art. But the archway there really does remind me of the intricate carving you'll see in Mughal structures, whether that's wooden doors or stone structures that have these passageways like the Jali we saw in the Babri Mosque. So I love that there are these historical touch points to like the Mughal Empire and subsequent buildings, but it also feels so fresh and that interesting juxtaposition between, the sword and the otherwise the openness of the structure. So I don't know if you had anything to add on that piece or if there were particular questions about it, but I'm going to take another look.
Yeah, if there are more questions, I'd love that. I can say that from the responses that we've gotten so far, I think that these pieces are perfect for getting kids and students to think about and bring their own reflections to it. I mean, we've had people compare this to an elephant, remember, Glenna? And,
yeah.
And also...
Yeah, the back of an elephant.
Yeah, which I love because... I was tending to look at the negative space in the middle where the sword is, and I was ignoring the structure, and it was more, that was really wonderful. Someone else brought to our attention just how teak is such a particularly hard wood and difficult to carve. So even the process, again, this different aspects coming in. But the first thing that one of our lookers said about this, they just said, this feels like a story. Someone's telling a story, which was perfect because without knowing it, this artist comes from, his parents were both storytellers involved in the theater. And somehow that was perceived in the piece, but you don't have to know exactly what it means. So I think a lot of these works, because they are mashups, would be great to talk about with students and just get their perspective.
Yeah. What I love as an educator is how open-ended a lot of these pieces are. I mean, you can interpret them, because they are contemporary and they are such fresh, original takes. You can see so much in them and you can interpret them in so many different ways simultaneously. And we saw beautiful examples of that when we spoke to our committee members. And, in that one structure, we can see a triumphal arch or, the archway of India, but we can also see an elephant and the sword being meaningful and relating to other Indian histories. So there's just so many different avenues and ways that you can approach these pieces. So I'm looking at the Q&A, Catherine. I don't know if you saw this, but Maria was saying that she can see Sandy Skookland in this work. I think she's referring to Diameta Bhupals. She says, does the artist ever leave her room installed so that the viewers can interact in the spaces? Yeah, here we go. I think that's I think that's what she's referring to, since I didn't notice when that was written.
Sorry,
but yeah, can you speak to the spaces and how she sees those as the artist?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get my mute to unmute. What I've read and heard her say is that she doesn't even show those spaces to her friends. I think that it's not about that's a really good question, because I was about to say it's not about the space itself, but I think the process, even if there was no end result, I think for her, the process is really meditational. And she talks about the idea of sort of collecting. I think, I don't know that, it's about the photo. I mean, that's strange because you actually see more images online of her spaces, but I think it's because people are so knocked out by the fact of it, or they don't believe that's really what it is, so they need to see it themselves. But the end result is the photo. And it's one of those magical objects that once someone tells you what's behind the mirror, it's a completely new image that you're seeing. And and in terms of ambition, it's not just scale, it's time in this piece, I think.
Yeah, this piece is so much about time, literally in the sense of, a waiting room being about that liminal time when you're in between and you're waiting. But yeah, what I've read too about this artist is that, because I think for us at least, or for me, it's a natural reaction to say, oh, but, isn't it hard? Don't you hate taking it all apart after it's taken you, a year and a half to put it together? And she said, no, it's kind of a relief. Like, I'm glad to be done. And, that was the process. And then I take the photo, and that's the art that lives on, and then it's done and it's on to the next thing. And to me, that really speaks to the ephemeral nature of a lot of what goes on in India. Again, I think this goes back to sort of the cyclical nature of time and this notion of, regeneration and rebirth. And in order to be reborn, there has to be that element of destruction. And so, we have, if you've ever seen, people creating sand mandalas, like that a lot of people have seen the Tibetan monks who create those, or women who create rangolis outside their doorstep. These are all, things that are sort of pervasive throughout India and the subcontinent, and they are only around for a fleeting moment in time. And I think at least to me, I think it's a Western perspective, but it's hard for us to let go of that sometimes, I think, and say, but it's so beautiful. Like, how can you stand seeing it destroyed? But there's just this way of letting go and this feeling that, that's okay. That's part of the process of, this particular work of art. It's around for a little while. It's ephemeral, and then it's gone, and then it's on to the next thing. So in a way, it's maybe a little healthier to approach things that way. But yeah, I think there's that sense of just, letting things go. And yeah, we have a comment. In a way, she's an environmental artist in that way.
Well, that is a really good point. Actually, Glenna, that's the first time I've heard you say that about the sort of destruction and rebirth. I love that idea. But environmentalism is also a part of this exhibition. I would say that's one of the themes in different ways, just the idea of this sort of rapid urbanization. There's another artist that she specifically, in this exhibition, she uses, it's Rajani Shettar, she's created basically like a wasp hive or nest that's floating. Our art handlers called it the shower curtain piece, but that's because it's made out of filmy plastic with eyelets and thread. So she wants to make very natural homes, but only out of industrial materials. So it's a comment on nature and industrialization at the same time, which is a major theme in India. It's a major theme everywhere. There's so many people populating the space. We're all seeing our cities sprawl out further and further. What used to be farmland, somebody took me to Lexington the other day and they're like, yeah, this used to all be farmland. It's the same issue. And I think that Jagannath Panda, that lives just outside New Delhi, he lives in an area that used to be farmland. It's being sort of, New Delhi is crawling out towards him, so that even that idea of the city windows, the city block behind Gandhi is part of that too. So yes, environmentalism is also in this as well.
Oh, great. Thank you, Catherine. I'm getting a request here too. Oh yeah, before we leave this image really quickly, someone pointed out the shadow of the person in the waiting room. And I only recently noticed that, and I don't know, do you think that's not her taking the photo? Like, she's created that as part of the image, is that right?
No, it's not in the image, but the problem is this diastag print is reflective. It's kind of like the problem with the Bartik Care. It is probably the person taking the photo.
It's so hard to tell sometimes, so thank you for clarifying that. So we got a request to show the first few images again. So we had some folks who couldn't join right from the start, but we're glad you're here, so thank you. We're happy to reprise some of these.
I'm going to start here just because this is, well, I guess there was this image of Rena Banerjees that's in the exhibition. So only a few of these shots are not from works in the show, but she's probably best known for her sculptural work. But she will be tapped to be a speaker for the exhibition later in the run, which I'm really excited. She is just so generous of spirit. I mean, she's all about the migration of all peoples, and she collects things with references to people all over the world and just puts them together, and she sees this oneness in the everythingness, and everyone's story is relatable because something similar has happened in the past and everyone's moving, and you know, that's why her titles are so long. It's interesting. She said she went to art school at Yale, which was everyone was very minimalist at the time, and she just was, you know, really throwing a wrench in the whole system, which I love.
And she's been doing some work, as I'm sure many of these artists have been, during quarantine and during all of this whole pandemic. And so it's interesting to think about, you know, artists and their actual practices now. And I feel like we've gotten that question a lot of, you know, how are artists going to react to the pandemic? How, you know, what's going to be the output or the outcome from all of this? And she's one of these artists who we've been lucky enough to be able to see some of her work that she's done in the past, you know, year. So it might be interesting. And in her talk, she might get into some of those examples of, you know, the portraits and the kind of things that have been inspiring her as she's, you know, been quarantined, as so many of us have been. So that could be an interesting kind of touch point for students to think about this as a moment for inspiration and to kind of look inward and see what, you know, drives you.
So, and very specifically, there's been something, and she has been pointing this out very loudly recently. She's been dealing with the idea of droplets for decades. So even if you look at the leg on the left side of this figure, you see how there's sort of some hovering dots on it. It's almost like she's poured wax. It's kind of raised and clear. This idea of vaporous dots or you know, droplets is something that she's been thinking about for a long time, and now has a completely different meaning. And I think originally she was working on this, you know, back during almost the height of the AIDS epidemic, but it has new meaning now. But so that's something she's still doing, and with new intention right now.
Yeah, it's interesting how those connotations can change over time. I think the next slide has a nice little detail of, or no, I think that was a different
I think you had a
image.
detail.
Yeah. Love to come see it in person.
Yeah. Again, this is, you know, this was such a surprising piece, and it really confuses people because they can't figure out what's going on at the time. But I think all of us, once you figure out that those are cars, you sort of relate. If you've ever been stuck in traffic, like you start to sort of relate to that. But also just, it feels like Superman just bent some steel, you know, like just the weight of all of this mass of people just literally kind of crushes everything. But it's also, I don't know, Glenna, is there something to the circle in?
Yeah, so to me that says something about sort of, again, that cyclical nature of time, but also the wheel is a big, you know, symbol in India. That the spinning wheel was a symbol for the independence movement and Gandhi. The wheel is literally on the flag of India. So that's definitely a powerful and familiar symbol, I think. But one of our docents recently pointed out that it's interesting how it's a wheel, and normally that would, you know, infer travel or, you know, forward movement. But this one, in this case, the wheel is what's stopping it from moving, is the way that it's bent and it's kind of grounded so that you can't actually get anywhere, just like those cars stuck in that massive pileup of traffic.
That's funny that you say that, because I've read the artist describe it itself like it's a flat tire too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, the texture of this is so great too. Every time I show this to our docents, they comment on that, like, you know, peanut brittle macaroni and cheese, you know, quality to the image. So actually, I'll ask you, before we leave this, can we go back to the Rena Banerjee piece just for a moment? I think we had a question about that. So you mentioned some of the different materials or media that she's working with in this particular piece. And so can you just speak to that briefly? I know she's incorporated a few kind of prefab elements, and then you can see there's some original drawing and painting as well.
You know, this is so lovely. Now, I will say this is not a large piece. It's about 30 inches wide, I would say, but it has different types of pigment. It definitely has this watercolory, you know, that you can see the watercolor sort of pool up. What she starts with is by letting the media kind of, almost like a Rorschach test, she lets it kind of pool up and then lets the form come out of that. The earth is a collaged element, but then, you know, what looks like feathers is actually ink that, you know, that's painted on. But the blue flowers, those are crocheted doilies. So it's as if she used them as stamps and inked them and laid them on the paper. So I love that too, as that sort of, again, it's a kind of found object. I think it probably relates in her mind maybe to her mother or their home or something, but turning it into these flowers, I really love that.
Yeah, it's a great mixture. I see so many dualities in this piece, and that's one of them, that like kind of prefabricated or sort of not mass produced, but you know, like repeated versus the completely original handmade elements.
I'm just going to spin through until somebody cries stop. And then
And maybe what we'll do is at the end I can show that video again, just in case anyone missed it the first time around, just as a kind of reprise.
that's a really good idea because you'll see other works too. So the photograph in this one, there are 3 photos on the left. You can just see one. This artist would go to Mumbai junkyards, scrap yards, and he stumbled upon thousands of found photographs. He bought a bunch of negatives from some gentlemen that were trying to scrap the silver off of them, you know, from old photography. So what he was able to do was collect this body of images from the 60s, 70s, 80s. So the sort of post-colonial, pre what he calls soon to be Silicon Valley world. And they're photos with sort of poetic just writing on the bottom. It would just be like one phrase to kind of hint at a story going on, but you can't quite piece it together. So those are wonderful, again, found objects. Some of these artists, and then on the other side of the wall, and it was a collage in your, not a collage, but a print based on found images. There's another artist that basically sees this flood of images that we all receive every day. Thousands, you know, people are posting millions and millions and millions of photos. So he sees that as this sort of ether, and he pulls images and overlays them to make a new image. And then he also created a video work to the left, which to me feels very like early MTV. It has that kind of almost a found object feel to it too, like he's using found footage. It's very grainy. So that's another great thing. I can really see students loving his work and that idea of, you know, they're so into that internet world.
Yeah, I love the breadth of this exhibition, and that there's so much in terms of digital offerings, and it's multimedia. There's found footage and videos, and there's you know, ones that are a little bit interactive even. So there's a lot here in terms of material and media. So you know, if you have students who are interested in photography or video or new media, there's something there. There's something in just about every medium, I think, in this exhibition. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. And I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us this evening. I know this is not the evening for educators that we are used to having. We miss you. We miss you being in our building, in our space all together. We miss your students tremendously. We love having students and teachers here with us. And so we're certainly missing all of you. I hope that we'll be connecting with you again soon, whether that's you're clicking through our website, walking through the galleries, or bringing your students on virtual tours. We'd love to connect with you more. So this is just the first program of many that we'll have with this exhibition. So in conjunction with Visions from India, we're going to have talks, films. We're going to have a great virtual Diwali celebration featuring DJ Rekha, which we're super thrilled about. So I hope that you enjoyed the rest of your evening and that we will see you here. This exhibition opens Saturday, and there's a special preview on Friday for our members, which I hope many of you are members or will become them with our special educator discounts. But with that, I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to share this little preview with you, and we hope to see you soon. All right, take care, everybody.